Magnetic filters. These are great when you want to swap on and off filters really fast, and once you start using them, they kind of become a very essential part of your workflow, and it's hard to go back to regular screw-on filters. Now, these are probably the two biggest contenders right now for magnetic filters. You have the PolarPro Helix MagLock system, and then you have the NiSi JetMag system. Now, which one is better? Today, we're going to figure that out. Now, let's start off with the mounting design because that's probably going to be the biggest thing that differentiates the two. So PolarPro has a design where the filters magnetize onto the front of the magnetic ring, and then it actually locks onto the ring. Once the filters are mounted, they're actually locked in, and the way to take them off is there's two tabs on the side, and once you press it and turn it, then the magnetic rings come off. This system also allows you to stack multiple filters on top of each other. For the NiSi JetMags, their system is a little bit different. So the filters still magnetize onto the magnetic ring, but once you magnetize it, there's this white tab on the side, and as soon as you slide in the handles onto the white tab, then it's locked in. And the way it does this is that there's almost like a layer in the rings, and once you line up the white tabs, the layers slide underneath each other, and that's what locks it in. And the position where the handles are also has that little tab, so as soon as you stack multiple filters on top of each other and you slide it, then it locks it in. Because they're locked in, you can actually pick up the lens and the filters won't come off, but keep in mind this is not a hard locking system. So as soon as you turn the filters and you take it away from the white tab, then you can easily just pull off the filters. These magnetic rings are still really strong, and I've actually never had the filters pop off by accident. Keep in mind that if you are doing something that is very critical and you have to make sure that the filters don't come off, maybe you're rock climbing and you're shooting something, or you're shooting from a helicopter. Of course, these are very niche situations, but in those situations, you have to 100% make sure that you're never going to drop a filter. So in that case, the NiSi JetMags may not be the filter for you because they don't have a hard locking system like the PolarPros do. One other thing to keep in mind is that because there is no hard locking system, when you try to stack a filter and you rotate it so that the handle lines up with the white tab, it might accidentally shift the filter below it, and that might make it come loose because it goes away from the white tab. Now this is a little bit annoying because that means that I have to use two hands to put on the filters. I have to hold one filter with one hand, I have to hold the filter that's already on the ring, and then with the other hand I can slide on the filter and lock it. And that goes the same when you want to just pull off one filter. If you rotate one of the filters away from the white tab, you might accidentally turn a second filter away from the white tab as well. So I need one hand to hold onto one of the filters and the other hand to turn it. With the PolarPros, because there is a hard locking system, you can just use one hand to take off one filter at a time. For both of these systems, you do need their proprietary magnetic ring, and if you don't have these rings, you won't be able to mount these filters onto your lenses. Now let's look at the variable ND design of the filters, and variable NDs are something that I very commonly use in my workflow. So for the PolarPros, it's very easy. There's just a ring that goes from 2 to 5 stops. They do have 6 to 9 stops as well. And you can just turn the filter ring and adjust your ND. If you do get the version of VND with a CPL built in for the PolarPros, there will be a second ring where you can turn it and adjust your CPL. For the NiSi JetMags, it's a little bit different because you have the VND that goes from 1 to 5 stops and you can turn the ring and adjust the VND. But because there's no hard locking system, you can actually, instead of just rotating that ring, you can rotate the whole filter around and that will adjust your polarization. So it basically acts like a CPL and a VND in one by default. Keep in mind that when you turn the VND to adjust the polarization, because the white tabs aren't aligned anymore, the VND can pop off. So let's look at the filter types. PolarPro has been around for a lot longer, so they have a lot more variety of filters. So PolarPro has VND filters from 2 to 5 stops, they also have 6 to 9 stops. They have VNDs with the mist built in. You can get normal mist or gold mist. You can have the VNDs with CPLs built in. They also have a lot of gimmick filters, so like the new center split filter or the warp filter or streak filters. And then they also have the very popular filters like the short stash everyday filters. So you're going to have a ton of choices with PolarPro. Now NiSi, even though they've been doing filters for a while, the JetMag system is still relatively new, so their choices, they do have a lot of choices, but they're a lot more general and common. So NiSi has a 1 to 5 stop VND, they have their fixed ND filters, they have mist, they have some graduated filters, and these are a little bit more general and more common versus the PolarPros. So they do still have a lot of options, but I think the PolarPro system is built a little bit more, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing for NiSi, and I'll explain why. So one of the greatest things about these filters is that you can stack them. So for PolarPro, right now I have a 2 to 5 stop ND filter on right now, and I want to put on a mist filter. Now you can just easily pop these on, and now they're stacked. But the problem with this that I found is that These filters are pretty thick and they are pretty heavy, and I think it might be due to the locking design that they have. And because they're a little bit thicker and heavier, it almost makes me not want to stack on filters. So instead of stacking a 2 to 5 stop and a mist filter on top of each other, I might want to just buy a 2 to 5 stop with a mist built in. But that means I'm going to have to get an extra filter. And if I want even more ND, I could buy a 6 to 9 stop, but if I don't want to stack a mist on top, I might also want to additionally buy a 6 to 9 stop with a mist built in. And as you can tell, it starts to get pretty ridiculous because then you're buying so many different filters. Of course, if you don't really mind stacking the filters and you don't care too much about the weight, then obviously you don't have to buy as many. You could just get a 2 to 5 stop, a 6 to 9 stop, and then a mist, and then you can play around with the combinations of whether you want to stack them or not. But with NiSi here, I think the system is pretty cool. So right now, this kit that I have, it has a 1 to 5 stop VND, it has a hard 4 stop ND filter, it has a mist filter, and you can stack the filters. And as you can see here, these filters are pretty thin compared to the PolarPros. So let's say I want to have a 1 to 5 stop VND, I can just slap that on. If I want to stack on a mist, because they're so thin, I can just slap that on, and they're actually really light as well, so I don't really mind stacking filters on top. And then if I want more ND, I can just add in the hard 4 stop ND filter, and the 1 to 5 stop VND basically turns into a 5 to 9 stop VND, which is really cool. So I don't have to worry about purchasing an extra 6 to 9 stop VND. I can just slap on that fixed 4 stop ND filter. And again, because these are so thin, I don't mind stacking them at all. You can see even with the VND, the hard stop ND filter, and the mist filter all stacked on top of each other, if I compare the thickness of that to just the VND and mist on the PolarPro, you can see the difference of the thickness, and I do prefer how thin and light the NiSi JetMags are. Now, if you do shoot with a lot of wide lenses, you do want to make sure that you're aware of stacking filters. For the NiSi JetMags, I believe the advertising can go as wide as 16mm and still stack 2 filters without any vignetting. And I believe the PolarPros was 17mm while stacking 2 filters without any vignetting. But if you are going wider than 16mm, you do want to be aware of the vignetting. As you can see here, I have a 10mm arm right now, and with the NiSi JetMags, I can put on the VND with no issue. If I put on a VND and a mist on, then you will start to get a little bit of vignetting. Personally, for me, 10mm, it's so wide that I don't mind cropping in a little bit. But if I try to do the same with the PolarPros, if I stack on 1 filter, you can see there's no vignetting. But if I stack on 2 filters, you can see there's a lot more vignetting compared to the NiSi's. Color accuracy is also going to be a big deciding factor with the 2 filters. The PolarPros I found were a little bit warmer, maybe a little bit more green compared to the NiSi's. Here's a side-by-side comparison with the camera settings all locked and with no ND filter compared to the NiSi's and the PolarPros. I do find that the NiSi's tend to have a little bit better color, and I'm not surprised by this because NiSi has been doing the true color filter system for a while, and they've adapted that true color system into the JetMags, and they've always had very good color accuracy. So I think the NiSi's win for color accuracy, but not by much. I haven't really had any problems with the PolarPros as well. Maybe I have to do a slight correction in post, but usually it's not a big issue for me. Now for the carrying case, because the PolarPros are a little bit thicker and heavier, this case is a lot bigger. Keep in mind though that I do have 4 filters in here. I have a 2 to 5 stop, I have a 2 to 5 stop with a mist built in, and then I have 2 just general mists, and then I have all the adapter rings in the middle. So while this case is bigger, I am carrying a lot of filters in here. For the NiSi's, this case is really small. I have 4 adapter rings in here, and then I have the full set of just the filters, so VND, a 4-stop ND filter, and a mist, and then the front and back cap. And this package is a lot smaller, but I'm also not carrying as many filters as the PolarPros. Now, a big deciding factor is also going to be the price of these. So for the PolarPros, if you want to get a 2 to 5 stop, a 6 to 9 stop ND filter, and a mist filter, it's going to start to rack up to a pretty hefty price. But with the JetMags, like I mentioned, with just this one filter kit, you have the 1 to 5 stop VND, you can slap on the 4 stop and it becomes a 5 to 9 stop VND, and you get the mist as well, and you also get the 4 adapter rings, and you can do a lot with that. So in terms of value, I think the NiSi's are going to be better for it, but the PolarPros also have a lot more of these other filters that you might like the streak filters, warp filters, the short stash filters, which everyone really likes. So it kind of just comes down to what filters do you want? Does the JetMags cover everything, or are you going to have to spend more to buy individual filters for the PolarPro system? So that's pretty much all the difference with the PolarPro Helix MagLock system and the NiSi JetMag system. And I think at the end of the day, it basically comes down to your preference. I have some friends who have used the NiSi JetMags and they've liked it a lot, but one of the biggest gripes was that it's hard to turn the filters and put on or take them off without using two hands, and because of that, they have preferred the PolarPros. They've also liked that the PolarPros have a hard locking system while the NiSis do not. But I have some other friends who really don't like how big and heavy the JetMags are. And again, you can see that the difference isn't super big, but especially if you're using a long lens like this and you have a lot of weight on the front, it starts to get even more front heavy than it already is. So that can be a big deciding factor for you. And I think at the end of the day, it just comes down to you making your pros and cons of each of the filters, which I've already listed, and you just thinking about which one you care about the most and which one you don't think will really bother you. If you have any questions, let me know down in the comments below. If you like this video, remember to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to see more photo video content, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.